I'm proud to announce that today's episode is brought to you by Gelt, which you'll hear about later on in the episode and in the show notes. Most business owners think growth will make life easier. There's more revenue, more customers, and more employees, more momentum. But for a lot of founders, the opposite happens. The business grows and suddenly everything becomes harder. The team needs constant direction. Margins get thin. Meetings multiply. Agencies disappoint. You can't unplug. You can't sleep. And somehow, even though the company is bigger, you feel more trapped inside it. What got you from zero to your first million stops working at the next level. And that's the part nobody talks about, because scaling a business isn't just about growth, it's about operational clarity. Today's guest, Lauren Zaslansky Connor, has spent years helping founders and consumer brands untangle the chaos that comes with growth. She's worked across operations, revenue strategy, e-commerce, retail, leadership systems, and organizational structure, helping businesses simplify, scale, and stop becoming dependent on the founder for every decision. In this conversation, we talk about why complexity quietly kills profit, how burnout becomes a hidden margin leak, why fewer products often create more growth, why agencies fail, and how founders accidentally become the bottleneck inside their own company. But maybe the most important idea in this entire episode is this: if your business cannot function without you, you don't really own a scalable business yet. This is one of the most practical conversations we've had about growth, leadership, and building a company that can actually sustain success long-term. So let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of the Financial Freedom Podcast. Our guest today is Lauren Zaslansky Connor. She is an entrepreneur. We're going to talk about business operations, revenue management. Really happy to have her on to talk about that with the audience. Lauren, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Lauren Zaslansky Connor, SAS Business Solutions. I'm a Fractional COO, Revenue Operations Advisor. I work with owners and founders. I help them figure out what's stuck and how they move forward, helping them prioritize what they need to do and then leading execution to help them move forward.
What I love about, in layman's terms, you call yourself the real imperfect human revenue and operations leadership for mission-driven consumer product businesses, bringing clarity, structure, and sustainable growth without chaos. Somebody searching for a solution to a problem, how would they come to you?
Often they don't know what the problem is. The problem looks like, I need to grow. I'm thinking about selling one day, but mostly I can't sleep. I'm stressed. My team is coming to me with questions. I feel like I have to answer every single one because I don't know if I can trust them, or I don't feel confident I've left all of the information in my head for them to make their own decisions. I help owners get what's in their head out so that they can make their decisions, maintain control to an extent. They don't want to give up what they own, but they want to be able to rest easy. It's operationalizing decisions. So they only need to come in for the exceptions. So they're making big decisions. Everyone knows what those decisions are.
What I really love about it, you've had roles at Disney, MBA from Columbia, helping companies bring clarity, structure. One question: why do good businesses with strong products still struggle with clarity and decision-making as they grow?
When things are working well, people assume that they're working well because they're doing things right. And then they hit a breaking point. They expand, start to juggle more channels, more products. They think every new product, retail outlet, service they develop is going to be as good as the last. They start to cannibalize. They start doing double work for that same slot. They have the same customer. There's a diminishing returns element to it. The growth creates more noise, distractions. I come in and calm that noise down. There's pivot points that companies need to shift. It could be at $1 million at a certain staff level. When there gets to be a certain amount of people, the founder cannot be in charge of everything. They need to figure out new structures. What worked at 5 people and $500,000 does not work at 5 million and 100 people. You can't keep doing the same thing. A good example, you bake cookies. You're great at baking and you bake cookies for the sale. That's great. Now you bake cookies and you're trying to sell them across the country. Your kitchen doesn't have enough ovens. You don't have enough people. You have to change what you're doing. If you keep trying to do it, what are you doing? It stops working. You need to revisit the processes that worked and change what you're doing. That is hard because you have to take a step back, which is scary, in order to move forward.
Why fewer products often lead to better growth and higher profit?
It goes back to where if you have one slot, one customer, there is growth, But there's cannibalization that's happening when you have things competing with each other. You're doing double work. You're spending time thinking about different products, services. You're slicing the market in different ways. When a customer comes to your website and deciding between the services that you have, they don't need 10 choices. They might need 3. Only going to pick one. You've made your team develop 10 different services. I come in at every size, cutting down in order to grow. I've written articles and blogs about pruning a tree and then you can grow. It's letting room. You're focusing on what really matters, the key services and products, so that those get really good. Your customers know where to focus. You're chaperoning customers to best offers, the ones that you're able to invest in the most.
You mentioned customers and visitors visiting your website. Talk about companies, e-commerce and retail compete. How do you make e-commerce, retail work together instead of competing?
This is my favorite. This is where a lot of companies fail. They separate their salespeople. They think if you fight against each other, you're going to win. But if you look at this as two sides of the same coin, a customer doesn't think of Target and Target.com as two separate companies. They want a unified experience, omni-channel. This works for any industry. If you're the medical field, when I go to the doctor's office, I want my experience with the chatbot to mirror the person at the office to know what I just told the chatbot. It's the same thing. You need to think about this from a customer point of view. The way I look at this from inside the company is always remember the customer. Sometimes that means taking a product and to split the line. You say, okay, have different assortments at retailers and online. Online, I can only get the package that includes office supplies. I'm going to buy the whole packet because I'm starting a new job. But if I go into the store, I might want to buy individual pens, but they're part of the same assortment. Then sometimes if I'm launching, I want everything on the same day. That would be the same thing. Sometimes we'll have windows. Think about the movie industry. They're grappling with this all the time. They're looking at the windows to say, okay, the theaters get something for a certain window, then it goes to TV. My TV gets it a few weeks, months after the theater gets it. If you're not thinking about it holistically, you're missing the opportunity to maximize different channels and maximize your overall business.
What's something a company can do today to improve their e-commerce sites?
I go back to thinking about it from the customer's point of view. I sat with a business owner the other day. We looked at her site. One of the things we noticed, the font was too small. See what you can see from a distance. Can I read it? Does it make sense to someone who is not in your industry? Is the language clear to somebody who doesn't have 20 years experience developing the formulas for the product? Start there. The information has to be accurate. It has to be good. Eventually, it has to be beautiful. But at first, it has to be correct. Can I read it? Does it have words, pictures, and video that give the same information? People often leave out those things. They'll put something in bullet points, and then the pictures will not mimic that. I have children. I think about how they learn all the time. Some people are visual learners. Some people like to look at pictures. Some people watch videos. If you have the same information in different ways, people will capture it in different ways. Another easy thing to do, when you have videos, think about people are often doing this at work when they're not supposed to be. Have the videos work if there's no sound. What are they seeing? Turn off the sounds, watch it without sound, and then listen to it without looking and see if your message is getting across either way.
A quick question. Are you paying more in taxes than you should? Most high-earning physicians overpay by tens of thousands because their CPA only looks backwards, not forward. Gelt is different. Dedicated CPAs powered by AI that work year-round, not just at filing time. Tax strategy and proactive planning for practice owners, investors, and physicians with complex financial lives. Built specifically for professionals who want to keep more of what they earn. To find out more, check out joingelt.com. That's joingelt.com. Links are in the show notes below. You mentioned consultants. What makes businesses decide to work with agency at what level? What does a healthy agency relationship look like from both sides? What are some of the biggest mistakes to avoid? Why do most agency relationships fail? How do you make yours actually work?
I hear leaders, owners say, I keep hiring marketing agencies that fail, or the sales agencies are trying to rip me off, or the bookkeepers, they don't get me. When I drill down to the root cause, I'll ask questions like, what was your onboarding process like? Or when you meet monthly to go through your numbers, What questions are you asking? Think about this as before you meet with somebody, what are you looking for when you outsource different parts of your business? Thinking like an employee, I need to know what I'm looking for. I want somebody to do certain marketing. I'm hiring someone to do search engine optimization. Do I know what that means? Do I know what the acronym means? Do I understand what I'm hiring for? Often people hire somebody to do search engine optimization. They expect the person to do something completely different. There's a disconnect. I say sometimes people get the icky feeling, I don't trust this person. I'm getting bad vibes. Trust your gut. When the relationship starts, there has to be honesty. Trust develops over time. As a business owner, if you're not giving information to your agency, they won't have the tools to do a good job for you. You as an owner, people on your team need to be sharing information about your business to let them help you. That is something that is important. When you're getting information, you need to be reading that information, asking questions about the information, get marketing data, highlight every word you don't understand, ask about it publicly, get your team to ask about it. What does that acronym mean? There's so many acronyms. Often from the agency side, they're specialists. They use words, acronyms, and lingo most people don't know. They say it with confidence that business owners feel insecure. They don't want to ask. Show your team it's okay to ask because this is where things fall apart. That's just the beginning. Yeah.
What are the most common revenue or margin leaks in consumer businesses?
It's when people are doing double work for the same slot. If we're talking consumer, there's only so much room at retail. You overdevelop for the 1 or 2 slots you're going to get. That spends a lot of time and energy. That's one margin leak. Often business owners are not thinking about their time or the energy of these things. They're looking at the cost of goods sold of the one product that makes it to shelf. That might be fine, but all the other products might not be making it into the cost. They might be looking at their cost too. That's one area where margin seems to seep out. Another is churn. I'm going to go back to churn of agencies, assistants, or people that work for you because they're not onboarding and training people or giving them time to get up to speed. You know, if somebody says it's going to take 6 months to learn about your business and contribute. Then after 3 months, they get fired, a new person comes on board. That's a margin leak, right? It's not looked at that way, but that cost the business money. That's another area. There's a culture in these startups. One of your guests talked about this culture of you make mistakes and fail. There's this culture of burnout that's happening in a lot of small businesses. But I go back 25 years in corporate where I would leave at 5 o'clock and people are like, half day, Lauren? That culture of burnout becomes a margin leak. People get burned out. The founder is giving burnout by example, but people feel that if they keep working harder or longer, they're going to get better and better. I believe you can't sell your business if you can't take a vacation. Thinking about how you can take breaks allows you to build margin cushion in because you start thinking about more efficient ways to do things.
How can leaders strengthen systems and structure without losing the heart or mission of their business?
I believe talking and listening to your team is the best thing you can do. Often I'm brought in because there's a disconnect between leadership and the team. If you are actually listening to what your team is telling you, there's assumption somebody is not doing their job because they don't want to. Kids these days are lazy or old people want to rest on their laurels. Often you have to go deeper. I'm not talking about a 3-day retreat, take them to the beach or ping pong tables, but it's understanding what is getting in the way of people doing their job. We could think about the best bosses we ever had. They're people who understood, trusted us to do our jobs, but they also listened when something was not working. Instead of blaming us, they said, what is getting in the way? How can I make your life easier? If you think about how you can help your team do their job better and listen with curiosity, you are going to be able to move the ball forward. We can talk about goals all day long, setting realistic strategies, but figuring out what's getting in the way, sometimes it's the smallest things getting in the way of people being successful. Finding out what that is, figuring out how you can clear those boulders will things much further than you realize.
We talked about product mix. How can a company evaluate their product mix to optimize profitability?
I look at margins narrowly and then broadly. Earlier, I talked about if you look too narrowly, you miss leaks that may be happening. I build hierarchies at all levels. You have to drill down. That means you look at your overall margin. That means everything, your entire profit margin. You want to look at how is margin trending? It's a 4-dimensional exercise. And then you drill down into categories, pricing. What I do is bring in a cross-functional group in your business. If you need a facilitator, this is something I can help with, but other people can help. Bring in people from different parts of your business to bring in the data that they have. A dashboard is really nice. That conversation has to happen regularly. You're looking at, talking about, analyzing that data. You're projecting what could happen, and you're doing something about it. If you continue to have that conversation with people from different functions, very quickly you'll start to see these connections that are not necessarily obvious. Things start to connect in ways that you may not realize have nothing to do with the efforts that you think they do.
How do you know when it's time to bring in fractional leadership instead of hiring full-time?
It's when you don't know exactly what the problem is. I find fractional leadership is much lower risk. You're not replacing a full body. You don't need someone for the long term, forever. Either you're on your way, starting to scale, and you need somebody to bounce ideas off of. You need an external perspective. You want somebody who could have authority at some point, but come in with a fresh perspective. Not all problems are 40+ hour problems. Sometimes you need someone to come in and tinker around. That is a really good opportunity to say, let's start with somebody fractional. Over time, a fractional person will come in and say, okay, you can use a full-time person in here, but it doesn't need to be an executive. You could hire a full-time manager with a fractional executive to solve your needs for less cost. It's a lot cheaper to bring in a part-time fractional and a full-time manager than it would be to bring in a whole new executive team. That's a good opportunity to break away from those constraints that you might have been thinking about many years ago.
How can people connect with you and find out more?
I'm on LinkedIn. It's Zaslansky Connor. My website is zazbusinesssolutions.com.
Thanks so much for coming on. Let's zoom out. If you're a physician, founder, or high-income professional, and you feel like you're working harder every year, but not structurally freer, you're not alone. The mistake isn't effort, it's architecture. This show exists to help you convert expertise into scalable leverage, faster and with fewer expensive missteps. Here's the diagnostic I mentioned before. If your income requires your constant presence, if your capital isn't compounding outside your profession, if your highest value talent is doing low value tasks, you don't have a growth problem, you have a leverage design problem. And if you want to fix it with clarity instead of guesswork, I offer a limited number of one-on-one leverage strategy sessions each month. We audit your income model, capital deployment, authority positioning, and structural bottlenecks, and design your highest return move. If you're serious about compressing years into months, the link to apply is below.